So tell me about David Crane. Give me your best story about him?
Oh, my best story. Maybe I have to walk out now and ask him about it. But no, I think the funny thing is actually I never worked with David when he was at the special court because he left before I came. He left in 2005, I came in 2006. But the interesting thing is that everyone has always been talking about him as the one who set up the court, put it in the right direction and make things happen. I've only met him a few times over the last years, and actually only over the last 2 days I met him a bit more and familiarized myself a bit more with him. But I think he's one of those outstanding lawyers who also know how politics work, how diplomacy works, and how to bring those kind of things together. So I don't have any juicy stories about him.
We'll make it up later.
We'll make it up later. You guys can ask him. But I think he brings that unique combination of strong legal skills, diplomatic skills, and know that you can only make things happen with both feet on the ground.
Somebody just doesn't drop into the world of criminal law. What's your background?
I am a lawyer by training, so I studied law in Holland, and after that I worked for many years at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Holland. I was in the legal advisory department over there, and I was just having a lot of luck because at that time the stories came up about the creation of the Yugoslav Tribunal and then afterwards the International Criminal Court. And so as of 95 the discussions got started about the ICC, and I was just lucky that my boss at that time, the legal advisor of the ministry, was the chairman of the working group that started preparing for the Rome Conference in 1998. And so I was the guy behind his back who was constantly running around in order to make things happen. So you actually get a real good knowledge about what are the political, legal interests and issues and challenges to make it all happen. And at the Rome conference, unfortunately, my boss was not able to make it over there because he got sick and he had to go to hospital. And that made me become one of the chairs of one of the working groups. So that very long definition of war crimes in the Rome Statute, that was basically the result of my chairmanship of that working group over there. And it was just a fascinating period. You can't plan those kind of things. You just do it. You have the luck to be at the right place at the right time. And after that, I did the elements of crimes.
Hold on just a second, because that's fascinating to me because this is behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
We just know that in 1998, the Rome Treaty created the fundamental International Criminal Court. But behind the scene, 3 years in the making, it had to start someplace. Kind of how did that germinate?
Interesting is that because it is there's a funny story here. When I joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in '91, the first job I had to do was write a speech for my boss at that time. He was going to.
Your boss's name was?
Adrian Boss. Boss with only one S. And that was a speech he had to deliver about the draft code of crimes, which was one of those topics on the UN agenda for years. But being this young, enthusiastic lawyer, I wrote a fantastic speech about how important it was to create an ICC and whatever. And then after a few days, after I finished my first draft, he came into my office and said, Herman, you know what? A bit of a reality check over here. You know what? That topic about the creation of an International Criminal Court has been on the agenda since the UN was almost established in the late 40s or mid 40s. And it will be on the agenda for many years to come. So yes, we do pay lip service to it, but we also realize it will never materialize. That was September 1991. A year and a half later, the Yugoslav Tribunal was established and adopted by the Security Council in May of 1993. And 4 years later, that very same Adrian Boss became the chair of that working group to discuss whether time was right for the ICC. It's amazing, and from the very much sort of realpolitik kind of person who said, you know what, time is not right, suddenly time was right. But now, hey, we're in 2018 now. If we now look back at 1998, at the Rome Conference, it's actually pretty unique that we were able to pull it off. Because if we were to try the same discussion today, I can tell you what the outcome would have been. There would be no chance of having an ICC statute, no chance whatsoever. So with hindsight, actually there was a very small window of opportunity by which it was possible for the international community to make this happen. And by coincidence, probably more than anything else, it was just happening at that time. And you know, the ICC of course is not perfect, but it's like what so many people say about the UN. You know, it's not perfect, but if it wouldn't exist today, we would have to establish it. And that's the same with the International Criminal Court.
Let me drill down a little bit further. I find this fascinating. 91, now all of a sudden it's worked its way up to your boss being appointed, and maybe that was the right time. It appears that it was. What was it that made it the right time? Do you know? Can you articulate that?
I think it's more the political developments worldwide. You know, it was late 80s, it was the collapse of the Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War. And in the 90s, there was an approachment between former East and West. There was a recognition that the only real superpower that remained was the US at that time. The Russia and the former Soviet republics were all trying to find out what was the reality that they found themselves in. And so the whole international political scene was completely different from what it was now. China was not as powerful as it was today. So it was a unique political setting, and we probably all thought that, after the Second World War, never again, as everyone used to say. The Cold War for so many years, which was a complete stalemate on the international level. And then suddenly that all had gone, and there was this new kind of idea like, hey, wow, this world is going somewhere in the right direction. Unfortunately, we have to say that, that has been only a very short period of time, and stop it, Joe. It was only a very short period of time, and that, since the early 2000s, of course, you had 9/11, you had other developments worldwide that actually saw us move away from that rather short, unique period in history where, the major powers and the most important countries actually were all going in the same direction. And for an institution like this, you need to have that happen. And just as an example, when we came to the end of the Rome Conference and the statute was adopted, the then Secretary General of the UN, Kofi Annan, he was on a trip somewhere in Latin America. He actually interrupted his trip and flew directly to Rome in order to be there at the signing ceremony. And he said, this is the most important statute and the most important legal instrument adopted under the UN umbrella since the UN itself. It was unique. But there again, unfortunately, you have to recognize that wouldn't have been possible today, and it's not possible today.
When you're going through the final few days, we'd had David Schiffer here.
Yeah, all right,
United States ambassador, and he kind of was talking about what was going on in his world.
Yeah.
What was your sense from your perspective, what was going on in the United States? As they're negotiating, but was it real?
I think what I have to say is that I think David Schiffer was in a very difficult situation because the instructions, of course, every single government comes with an instruction for the delegation to go over there, and he simply had extremely clear but also strict instructions. And David and I are good friends. We regularly are still in contact with each other, and we both still very much are strong believers in international justice. But it was what he needed to deliver on from his own government was something that was not possible for other states to accept, and somewhere a decision had to be drawn. If what he needed to deliver on would have been accepted, a lot of other states would have dropped out, and then I'm not sure where we would have been. So I think it's unfortunate because I think that certainly at that time, of course, the U.S. played a huge role also in the functioning of the former Yugoslav and the ICTY, the Yugoslav Tribunal. And since then, I've been working so much in the Special Court for Sierra Leone, in the ICC, actually with U.S. representatives, and I know that at many levels in the US that support for international justice is still there, but it's simply he wasn't able to deliver. That was beyond his control. He couldn't make it happen, unfortunately. And I think it was a personal challenge for him, because again, he's a true believer like I am, like he is, like many of us around here, but it was simply not possible.
Was there as you remember those sessions, kind of ground to a certain time, where there was sort of high noon? That's a term we use here.
Yeah.
Where the guns come up, and you kind of had to make a decision. You're in or out.
Yeah.
Was there such a high noon moment?
There was a high noon moment. In the end, towards the end of the discussions, let me say it was 5-week negotiations, and there was a draft statute, and someone actually made a calculation of the number of issues that still we need to decide upon in those 5 weeks, and there were over 1,250 issues in the draft, which was still in brackets, like we have to decide on this or that or more options or whatever. Some of them were more technical, others were really of political relevance, of structural vision about the court. And so up till the very last day of the Rome conference, it was absolutely not clear as to whether we would have a statute or not. 24 hours before the conference finished, if people would have asked me, do you think we will make it? I would have had to say, I simply don't know. And I think I wouldn't be the only one who would have said it. So many people would have said the same. And then the last day, when all those kind of things actually came together, when also, ministers came in from capitals to participate in the last negotiations, then actually we did see like, hey, wait a minute, we do have a draft, this is it, and now it's for everyone, take it or leave it. There's no room for discussions anymore, take it or leave it. The vast majority took it, voted in favor, and a few states unfortunately were not able to join.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, fantastic story. Yeah.
So you find your way to the Sierra Leone Tribunal.
Yeah.
Now, was Jim there? Jim was there at the time?
Jim was there at the time. I joined the Sierra Leone court in 2006. So David Crane and Jim, as of the early days, had set it up on the prosecutor's side. I joined there as a deputy registrar first and later as a registrar. So basically the managerial support for the entire court, support to judges, to prosecutor, but also to defense counsel, etc., to basically make that place happen. And it was a fantastic time, and I worked in the Yugoslav Tribunal, in the Special Court for Sierra Leone, Lebanon Tribunal, and at the ICC. But actually of all 4 of them, I like the Special Court for Sierra Leone most, because we were based in the country where the crimes had been committed. Every day you walked out of your house and you drove over to the court place, you actually saw on the streets why that court was necessary and what that court could deliver for people. And that was the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. You could actually see that court functioning. You could see that 9 to 10 people were arrested, were prosecuted, got a fair trial, got a determination of guilt, were convicted, and all of them are still serving their sentences, including, of course, Charles Taylor, the former president of Liberia. And he is serving an over 50 years sentence in the UK at the moment. That is just absolutely unique. And of course you can say it's only 10 people, what about all the others? But if you come out of a situation like in Sierra Leone, and of course that happens in so many other parts of the world, you cannot prosecute every single accused person or every single person that may have perpetrated crimes. The scale of it is simply so much beyond what you can do. So what the court did right, and what David Crane came up with in the beginning, what was right, is focus on the leadership those people that actually took decisions that made others, themselves included, commit serious crimes. And by focusing on that leadership, we actually set an example for what was wrong at that time, what needed to be prosecuted, what people needed to be convicted for. And it was a unique experience, and I was there. I left in 2009, but I came back in Sierra Leone when the court was closing down. And there was a big ceremony in the premises of the president of the country. And all political parties, whether in government or out of government, everyone praised the court for its contribution to the re-establishment of the government and the country of Sierra Leone. Everyone recognized that that was necessary to move on for people, to put justice in perspective and to create the right basis for a peaceful society. Of course, still a lot of work needs to be done in the country, obviously, but one of the preconditions for development, justice to be delivered, was fulfilled, and that has been a huge achievement, I think.
So you were there with Desmond, Sir Desmond de Silva was there.
No, the funny thing is, everyone is talking about him. I've met him only once or twice because he left, he had some health issues. He just left about a month before I joined the court. Unfortunately, because also here with David, with Jim, I hear all those fantastic stories about him. And I feel unfortunate that I haven't been part of that, because he has been a unique character, as everyone recognizes. But it's a pity that I haven't been able to work with him. And then I started working with Stephen Rapp when he came as prosecutor. Worked well with him, and of course with Jim Johnson and other people, and simply steered his court in the right direction.
So the timing stuff, were you still in Freetown, or had you moved the court to The Hague at that point?
When I came to the court, Charles Taylor had just been arrested, but the decision to have him tried in The Hague was already taken, but the entire systems had yet to be set up. So together with the prosecution side, but with everyone else, I managed to set up the office in The Hague to make sure that the support for the Charles Taylor case in The Hague was done, while at the same time also wrapping up all the other work in Freetown. So I spent most of my time in Freetown, but I also spent a considerable time of my time in The Hague, which of course was very easy for me, because I'm a Dutch person. I come from The Hague. I know the Dutch whole state inside out. So it was a very convenient combination for me actually to be able to provide all the service to everyone else to make that trial a success.
Then you go on to Lebanon.
Yeah.
Can you explain to the camera what's going on there?
Yeah, the Lebanon Tribunal is less known, and it's a bit of a different animal than all the other tribunals you're talking about. Because basically this was an investigation into the assassination of Mr. Hariri, the former Prime Minister of Lebanon. That's also why, for example, an International Criminal Court couldn't take the case, because it was more of a case of alleged terrorism, a terrorist act against a prime minister. And so the trial, the investigations were taking place. The tribunal was established in 2009, and I joined them 2 or 3 months after they were established. And unfortunately, we've never been able to actually, arrest the people who were on trial. But under the statute, it's possible to hold a trial even although the accused are not present. That trial is about to finish, and I think we will get a decision in the next couple of months, half a year or so. But it has been less known, because it's not like, the Special Court for Sierra Leone, where you talk about massive crimes against humanity, war crimes. It was a one incident, maybe with some other connected cases of terrorism against, prominent people in Lebanese politics, but it's much less known than the other tribunals. But it definitely, the concept as such is comparable.
Now you're at the ICC?
I used to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you there? Were there with Ocampo and then the transition to Bensouda?
No, I think Ocampo, when did he leave? Something around 2012 or so. So Fatou Bensouda took over in 2012. And I joined that court in 2013. So I was elected by the judges of the court for a 5-year mandate. So the registrar has a 5-year mandate, can in principle be re-elected. So I started in 2013 and I finished my mandate in April of this year.
Since you were at the beginning of the ICC, and now you're here 20 years later, been there, what's your report card? What's the 20-year report card of the International Criminal Court?
Oh wow! I must say that it's a mixed picture about the ICC. I will be very straightforward on that. I think they made a slow start with investigations, and to be perfectly honest, and I know everyone who knows me knows my position on that. The first prosecutor, Ocampo, took a number of wrong decisions as to his approach, the way he organized the prosecution's cases, and that's also why you see that those cases that he developed later on, a number of them did not always lead to the start of a trial. Some people were even acquitted before the trial was even started, or the indictment was not confirmed. There have been a few acquittals, and so the quality of the work was relatively slow, and the quality was not optimal. Then with Fatou Bensouda taking over, she has taken a very credible approach to actually improving and to take lessons learned from the first years in the court. On the registry side, the registry is there to actually support the prosecution with the judges, defense counsel, representative of victims, etc. And also the registry, when I joined in 2013, I recognized that was not optimally functional. So I undertook a major reorganization of the registry, and I recognize that reorganization doesn't always make you very popular within organizations, but it was necessary to do. And being this stubborn Dutch guy and straightforward, I simply thought, well, when I was elected, actually, my message to the judges was, I know there are some problems within the court. I'm happy to pick up on those problems and change the place around in order to become more functional. And now that I've left the institution, and I see that the registry is a way more functional organization, an organ than it used to be. I worked incredibly well for 5 years with Fatou Bensouda. I served under 2 presidents, President Song from South Korea and President Fernandez from Argentina. And actually, which is pretty unique in those tribunals, the cooperation between those 3 principals, as we call them, the president, the prosecutor, and the registrar, was really good. We really worked well together. We were focused on the cases, we were focused on making the court a success, no big egos, to be perfectly honest. That's really what is important. And we actually turned that place around, and it is now a much better organization than it was 5 years ago, but still with a lot of challenges. Challenges with states parties. At the Rome conference, we really thought this is going to be the most independent and impartial international court. Hey, the Yugoslav Tribunal was created by the Security Council. The Rwanda Tribunal, the same. So this was supposed to be the most independent and impartial. Unfortunately, it's not the case. There's a huge level of control, micromanagement, so every now and then from states parties about the work of the court. Not in terms of the decision making of the judges when it comes to the cases. The judges remain absolutely independent and impartial when it comes down to their work. But the entire setup is one which creates a sort of a politicized environment within which the court has to operate. And to be perfectly honest, and that's what we discussed earlier, times have changed. 2018 is not like 1998. International justice for many countries is not as important anymore as it may have been 20 years ago. It's not that sexy anymore. We have terrorism, we have other challenges in the world that get more attention by states, and it's not about that I'm criticizing it, it's a statement of fact. Things have moved on, and the court is still there, has to function, is doing a good job, has its challenges, can do more, can do better, and also for the successors of, Fatu is still there, but President Fernandez has left, I have left, and for our successors, it's a big challenge of keeping that court on track, and for internal reasons, but also for the external community, the environment within which it has to operate. And that's a huge challenge. But as I said before, you know what? If the court wouldn't be there, it would have to establish today. Thankfully, it is there. It has to operate in very difficult circumstances, but it is an institution that is worth being supported, critically supported. So, they have to deliver, but also they need the support from states. Just one example, there are over a dozen arrest warrants out there, and the court doesn't have their own police force. They are dependent on states to hand over those people to the court. Dozens outstanding indictments, sometimes for over 10 years. The court can't function without the states delivering on their obligation to work with the court. There are President Bashir from Sudan, who's constantly traveling around. But he should be arrested by states. He's not. And the court would be extremely busy today if all those indictments would have been implemented and all those arrest warrants would have resulted in the delivery of those people to The Hague in order to get trials organized. The court will be very busy. It's not at the moment because of that. So it's too easy to simply criticize the court for it. It's the whole system is, to put it in diplomatic terms, less than optimally functioning at the moment, and there's a lot that needs to be done.
Were you back to Sierra Leone? Were you there when Naomi Campbell was brought in to testify? Were you part of that?
I just had left. I just had moved over to the other tribunal, but there was an amazing, probably the public gallery was never as full as that day when she was testifying. Whether it was the most, from a perspective of the case against Mr. Taylor, whether she was the most relevant witness is not sure, but of course it was a huge attention for the court, and of course it made a lot of publicity at the time.
Did your successor registrar call and say, what the hell do I do with this?
No, but the thing is with these kind of witnesses, as a registry, you simply support either the prosecutor or the defense counsel, depending on who brings the witness. And as a registrar, you function in a very neutral way. I don't have a view as a registrar about guilt or innocence of any of the accused persons. You simply help and you support the prosecutor, you support the defense counsel, and to create the preconditions under which a fair trial can take place. That is the role of the registrar. I'm not standing on the table when someone gets convicted or acquitted. That's not my role. It's for the parties to do that. But as a registrar, you're responsible to create the preconditions under which a court can effectively function and be an independent and impartial arbiter of cases that require judicial activity, given the magnitude of those crimes that are committed. And that's a fantastic job. It probably may not look as sexy as a prosecutor or a defense counsel or as a judge, but without that registry, none of them would actually be able to do the job, and that makes that is a fantastic job to have done for so many years.
So now your term is expired, now what?
Now I'm first I'm enjoying a bit of freedom right now, being here to talk to people who have been in the business of the international tribunals for so many years, seeing old friends, meeting new people, and I'm determined to stay in this area one way or the other. For me, rule of law justice, international justice, is the thing that keeps me going, and I don't know where it brings me in the next half year or year or whatever. But I'm confident there's so much to do still. So I'm looking around and exploring options in order to make it all happen.
Hans Corell is on the board of the Robert Jackson Center, and he was talking about the American Bar Association's initiative on the rule of law. Just wondered if that was something that you're aware of and of interest.
I don't know about this particular initiative, but I know Hans Corell, of course, very well. And it is, in the end, the interesting thing, it's a small community, International Bar Association, American Bar Association. I know many people over here. I have many friends here in the US, but all over the world. It's interesting to see how people move around. Constantly, you can find your friends back in other places. And you know what? I'm now having a very relaxing time here, and I'm soon back into business in order to work together with friends and colleagues to make things happen again.
You probably learned something from Jim here while you've been here already.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, but Jim and I, we worked. Of course, we worked for a number of years in Sierra Leone, and became very good friends over there. And friends with, of course, always with the recognition that we had different roles to play. But with that recognition, we both had the same drive in order to make it happen, and we did make it happen. And I think I must say that if 4 tribunals have been working, and I think that I can say to a large extent, the Special Court for Sierra Leone has been one of the best of all of them, has delivered enormously. And again, having been able to be on the ground to do the work there, where the victims of all the crimes that were committed, and who in Sierra Leone is not a victim, has actually been able to see what the court did and what we have been able to contribute to the build-up of the country and to deliver on justice. And that is one of the most fundamental preconditions of everyone's feeling about, fairness, justice, peace, etc. It's has been tremendous experience, and many years to come that I'll put my efforts and my time and energy into that.
Fantastic. What's the question I should be asking you? What's the one I'm missing here?
One thing that I think is often missing in those discussions is about the position of victims. I think in the end, those kind of tribunals, those kind of courts and tribunals are really about delivering justice to victims. It's not an abstract thing that you're doing. What you're doing actually is making sure that victims see that justice is being done for them. And there's a fantastic story that I have. When I was working at the International Criminal Court in late 2015, we started with the case of Mr. Ongwen. Mr. Ongwen was the right hand to Joseph Kony of the Lord Resistance Army in northern Uganda and Central African Republic and Sudan. Normally when the trial gets started, as a registrar, you sit in the courtroom during the first day, you hear opening arguments, etc. And I agreed with the presiding judge. I said, what I would like to do is I want to do it differently now. Justice is about victims. I want to go to that part of Uganda where Mr. Ongwen is considered to be responsible for the crimes committed in that part of the country. And we're going to make sure that the people who now still live in that part of the country are able to follow the proceedings here in The Hague. So what we did is, in 6 or 7 different parts of northern Uganda, we set up small television screens. We made a live broadcast from the proceedings in The Hague to those places, and actually managed also to get interpretation into the local language spoken over there, Acholi, so that people could actually follow it. And when I came to one of those 7 places, I was just amazed at that place, which was, no one lived there anymore, but people came, sometimes walking for hours and hours, to actually make it go and to be witness of that first day in the courtroom for Mr. Ongwen. And we showed it, and there were at least 5, 6, 7,000 people watching on the big tents. It was incredibly hot. Big tents, television screen, staring at that screen, and you could see in their eyes that, hey, this is being done for us. We were the victims of crimes committed at that time. Of course, whether Mr. Ongwen is responsible, that's where the trial is for, but we see that this is being done on our behalf. And when I spoke to many of those people at that time, but also local leaders, community leaders, religious leaders, we spoke about what justice means for people. And some of the people talking about, oh, but traditional justice here is different from the international justice. In the end, it's not. It's all about the fundamental concept of justice is universal. I'm absolutely convinced about that. And those 2 or 3 days of walking around, talking to people, and showing that video for 3 hours to the victims over there was the best day I had at the court there. And half a year later, I actually came back to Uganda, and as a result of that first day, actually the Danish embassy in Uganda gave us a huge pot of money in order to be able to continue to do what we call outreach to victims. And when I spoke to people over there, they said, you know what? We own this process. This thing is done for us. We are the owners of this process. And that's really what justice is about. It's not about egos or smart lawyers who do a case in court. It's also about that. But in the end, it's about what victims feel as to whether their suffering gets a day in court. And that's what happened at that time. And that's truly amazing.
You're to be commended for having that concept and reaching out like that.
Yeah, it was unique, and I didn't know for myself in advance how successful this was. And I had some fantastic people on the ground who prepared it all, and it was a big success. The Special Court for Sierra Leone was very good on outreach to people as well. The number of times that we've been going around in Sierra Leone, there's not a single village that we have not visited in Sierra Leone during all those years. But this one moment, this peculiar moment of the start of trial with so many thousands of people being able to follow that was unique in itself, but it was fantastic. Yeah.
You're fantastic.
All right, thank you.